Hello and welcome to the first video of 2023, well for me anyway, but I was on eBay and I bought another kit. Oh dear. So I bought this on Boxing Day, and I must admit this wasn't really going to be a video, especially one that we planned anyway, but either way I got this kit because I wanted a twin seat Mig-29. We all do. But this is the only one that you can really get, and there's fit issues. And I wondered, and it got me thinking, can I actually put this together without having any gaps? So let's see if I can do it. Okay, so let's first off look at the instructions. And as you can probably well tell from this kit, it is an old kit from 1993. There's not many steps throughout the instructions at all, but you know, it's not a complicated kit at all. But the idea that I have is that I'm going to glue these two parts together by sort of pegging this area first, getting that square, and then I'm going to put the louvers in afterwards. So I'm going to do it the opposite way around. So when they're in, then the idea is that I've glued these two parts together and then I can sandwich top and bottom. But the same is for the bottom piece as well. But the chin plates here, I'm not going to put them, say, in step 3. I'm going to do it in sort of step 2 here instead. So that is the plan. That's what I'm going to aim for. And then the idea is afterwards, I'm going to stick the cockpit in and slide it in like so. So hopefully I should be able to minimise the amount of gaps that I'm going to have on this kit. Now, I've cut all the parts off the sprue that I need. I've not particularly cleaned them all up. But if you get the two halves of the fuselage like so, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape them together where my thumbs are there. And then the front section, I'm going to, like I said previously, when I showed you in the instructions, I'm going to glue it like so. And then the top piece there should be pinned in. So hopefully... And as you can see, the actual fuselage two halves do actually fit quite well without glue. So next onto the louvers. If you sort of cut the tabs off, as you can see there, and then if I put it in the right place, there we go, then without sort of too much effort, the fit is actually quite good. So I'm quite pleased with that, to be honest with you. So what I've done so far is I've actually tacked the top of the two halves of the fuselage together. Now what I'm showing you here is the panel line needs to meet the straight edge of the gap at the front where the louvers should fit in there. This is so that the actual louvers are square to this panel line. So just make sure that is the case. Also that the level of the top half, the top half of the fuselage is square for the front and back halves of the said fuselage. Yeah, I hope you get what I'm on about. But anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm putting some super glue like I did at the top. But to be fair, like a complete idiot, what I didn't do was put enough super glue at the top and it sort of cracked again. So I had to re-glue it. But here I'm just making sure that everything's square. And then what I can do afterwards is come in with some extra thin and just make it perfect. Now with both halves of the fuselage all glued together, it's a case of putting the louvers in. Now I've actually made sure that one of the louvers is actually perfect, and I'm going to show you what I've done here. So if you just take some, and what I'm going to do is just use some Tamiya sprue cutters and then just lop off those edges there. And I've just left one just to make sure that I don't push it in and out and in and out and shake it all about. But here we go, shoving it in, and it's just a case of just putting some glue on there. And I'm using the old trick of the knife blade on the back so I can get it square. And as you can see, it's perfect. The next tricky bit is putting what I call the chin pieces in at the front. Now some people might have errors with this or difficulties. I must admit I built this kit as a kid. Actually probably weren't a kid, more a teenager to be honest with you. And I had this problem in this area where I had to do tons of filling. So I'm going to glue these parts in first, I think. And when they're glued in, it should look something like that. Now, I must admit, I've just used some super glue, and as you can see here, I'm just using some more super glue at the front just to square everything in and just tack it in, to be fair. I'm not doing anything else but tacking as I go along, and then I can come in with some Tamiya extra thin, and there we have it. That is it all glued in. Now the one problem I have got is that there's a big massive gap at the bottom. Now with the bottom plate going in and it's sort of fitting near enough perfectly, you've still got a gap. Anyway, we'll gloss over that. So what I'm showing you here is when the cheek piece is in, there's still going to be a seam line down there. There's no way of getting around this, to be honest with you, so you're going to have to fill it. And here's me trying to squeeze the cockpit in, which actually does go in afterwards. I must admit, I'm quite impressed with the way it goes in there. So you can actually sort of build it and put it in, and you can actually get the instrument panels in afterwards as well. So that is the cockpit in, and that is what I've done. So I've just basically filled it with some super glue on the side just to give it some strength, and the rear section is done as well. Yeah, right. Do you know when I said at the beginning that there wasn't going to be any gaps on this kit? We've got a problem.
Right you are. Cut!
So when the bottom plate goes in and I do push it down at the front, there we go, we've got a gap. One thing I have noticed at the back is I'm going to have to put some plastic card there to shove it up, like so. And then when it's in place, because what I found, and I didn't say, is that the actual two pieces, the back half of the fuselage, bottom half, shall I say, and this plate, don't actually marry up. But when you put some plastic card on there, it actually fits like so. The other thing is that you've got to sand these two areas down, because when it goes together and it sits down on the fuselage, it doesn't actually sit flush. But when it does, it actually fits like so. So quite actually a nice fit, and it needs to be a nice fit like this because of the intakes. Now it's time for a bit of a cunning plan, I think. So what I'm using is some super glue and some very, very, very small piece of cut plastic card, just to stop this sort of point moving. I don't want it to move too much. I want that sort of area to stay square, and I'm using my blade, number 11 blade, just to square everything up. Oh dear, looks like I've got a bit carried away, doesn't it? So I've put the wing on. There's nothing really major to talk about. It's 2 halves and it does actually go on pretty well. I've also put on the rear engine section here, bottom engine section even, and I've put all that together. There's not really any major gaps to talk about, to be honest with you, on this little bit. I have got the 2 clamps there just to make sure everything's square, and I've also put the 2 tails on there. They are one-piece tails and they actually do go on. There's a couple of gaps here and there, as you can see, but some triple P and it should fix that, no problem. Right, I'll show you how I put the engine together. Now, I've cut the tabs off at the back just so that I can sand it down and it's square for the back part, and it's 2 halves together, which is not major, to be honest with you. And I've also put the wheel bay in, as you can see, which tells you to do it after you've done the fuselage. Now this bit here, which I'm pointing to, actually stops the engine moving inboard, which is quite cool. And then if you use your finger and thumb at the back, you can squeeze it together so that it actually fits a bit better, and it pushes the engine up a tiny bit, not a lot. One thing I've noticed is that this starboard engine is a bastard at going together, as you can see there. So we're going to have to fix this. And the way that I did it was I just basically poured enough super glue in there. Don't pour it on the edge, whatever you do, like I've done there, dickhead. But anyway, make sure you pour enough super glue in so that when you put the actual engine down, the super glue runs into the gap and secures it. And then what you can do, and in my case, is if you're quick enough and fast enough, is place it down onto the fuselage in the right place, hopefully, and then push down with your finger, and the super glue should run down into the gap, securing it in place. And that's the theory anyway. And there we have it. That is the completed build, in a way, in a fashion. One of the engines went together, whereas the other one didn't. Twat. But either way, so yeah, and we had some plastic card to fill at the front. I'd rather fill at the bottom rather than the top, but either way, we've had to do that. But one area where I wanted to make sure was square is the top piece here. So that join around the top where the louvers go as well. And the front cheek parts have gone in relatively well, but you have to fill them anyway, so you can't get around that, to be honest with you. And also the front nose cone goes on surprisingly well, in fact really well. And there we have it. That is my take on putting this together. I mean, yes, I know some of you might be thinking, well, hang on, yes, I did mess up on the bottom engine piece and the front nose section, which I've had to fill with some plastic card. But that being said, yeah, I'm quite pleased with how it's come together, to be honest with you. It's not perfect by any means whatsoever, but that being said, you know, I am quite happy with it. So that begs the question, in the past, have you come across maybe a build, maybe somebody's done something on YouTube, or there's been a build review in whatever form on Google or whatever forum, and they might have probably cocked it up, messed it up, followed the instructions, but they've done their own interpretation of the build. Now, then you've taken that as gospel, and your idea of the build is not to build it. So you've put it in the box, put it in your stash and left it. But in actual fact, it's if you deviate from the instructions, even by the slightest, or you take all the major parts off the sprue, if that is the problem, you have a look in the instructions, you have a look at the kit, and you go, you know what, I might be able to put it that way. So if you do, instead of step 1, 2, 3, you do it 3, 5, 6, 1, for example, you might be able to turn a turd in a fashion into a better turd. But either way, that is the crux of it. So yeah, I strongly recommend go out, go and have a look at your stash, have a look, see what you've got, get the best turd you've got and build it, and see what you never know. You might be patting yourself on the back going, you know what, I did that. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to stop rambling, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Also, I'd like to thank everybody that subscribed over the new year and into the new year, and are still subscribing now, so thank you so much. And again, yeah, I'll see you again on the next video, which should be very shortly, so cheerio.